Tyler Selhorn, and welcome to another episode of Speak Easy, the podcast where we discuss communication, capturing our thoughts, and how we share those thoughts with our future selves and others. Managing our brains is core to 21st century work, and we're here to learn how to do it better than we did yesterday. Thanks so much for listening. Speak Easy is brought to you by Cleft, the easiest way to collect your thoughts. With our cross-platform applications, you can simply capture your ideas where you are and paste them where they belong later. Today, we are blessed to be learning out loud with Jonny Cosgrove. Jonny is a repeat founder, a neurodiversity and data protection advocate, and a top global distributed work influencer. Jonny's previous entrepreneurial pursuits include events, social media, and data protection. Most recently, Jonny bootstrapped Meeting Room in 2017 as co-founder and CEO, an XR virtual meeting room solution for distributed enterprise teams, becoming a top category solution with Fortune 500 customers including Shell, Nike, Red Hat, and UBS, while partnering with Meta and Enterprise Ireland. Jonny is currently launching Cleft, an idea capture and sharing tool. Jonny, it's my pleasure to be recording Speak Easy with you. It's also my pleasure to be building Cleft with you. I'm curious, what motivates you to build a tool like Cleft?
Thanks so much for the amazing intro and welcome, Tyler. I'm super excited and having to hold myself back here today, to be perfectly frank.
I mean, no, there's no holding back. We're going to go all in with the enthusiasm for this moment because we're launching Cleft to the entire world. This is the moment in time where we are time-stamping it, placing our flag in the ground and saying, come join us on this effort to become better knowledge workers.
Well, part of what I'm doing is answering your question, which is I spent the majority of my life very much having to mask and act in a very different way. From a communications point of view, I was having to hold back, like I'm doing right now, even with my body language. And in similar ways, that led me, like we all have our different reasons to why we go on different paths and journeys. And the Cleft journey for me became a bit of a mission to unlock a bit of that, which was not the intention, but it's definitely now looking back saying, okay, it lets me unfilter. It lets me get my thoughts out and all that. And I'm not going to go into exactly how the tool works, but it's a case of what Cleft means to me is a better way of getting what I'm trying to say out to other people. It's about communication, which is what we're here to talk about today. And for me, a big driver, so before that was, look, there's a lot of people like myself and a lot of our team who are neurodivergent. And myself and Justin, when we started talking about this kind of stuff, we said, look, let's start with the edge cases. Let's start with the users who usually get left behind. So that was our basis. We wanted to build a house that everyone could walk into, fly into, or roll into, whatever the case is. And that led us to something which means for me personally as a user and creator, which is super exciting, I get to build something that is able to keep up with my thought process. It's not that every thought is amazing. It's that I get to capture them in a way that suits me and people like myself.
Okay, so let's dive in there. When you're thinking about capturing your own thoughts, tell me more about like that process. Like where are you? What are you using? What's in your hands? What's in front of your eyeballs? Like, how do you capture your thoughts? Like, obviously this is the thing that we're building at Cleft, but I'm curious, like, just what's going on in your mind? How do you get yourself ready to, or how do you just start doing it on your own when you have a thought to share with yourself or with others?
Okay, so let's step back a sec before I answer you directly.
Yeah.
Let's think about me like a page, like any of our, whatever your note-taking app or whatever your central source of truth is.
Zooming out. Okay, yes, knowledge management. Let's talk about it.
The properties of my page. I'm Jonny. I'm not just Jonny, an entrepreneur, like we've had the lovely intro, and thank you very much for filling out that property. I'm Jonny, who also likes to do a lot of yoga. Not that I'm looking like your average yoga bear. I like to run. I like to do a lot of different things. I like to get outside. I won't go on about that all day. I do photography. I do drone taking. And that's me when it comes to trying to look at all the different bits and pieces about who I am. And then core to a lot of that and core to my Cleft journey is I also found out along that journey that I'm also ADHD and autistic. So in terms of the way I approach things is probably a little bit different than some of your users might go for.
That's why we're talking to all these different people, right? You're going to be different. So let's learn about you.
So let's go into the basics. For me, I have to over-engineer what some people find incredibly easy. Routines and stuff, they're not in my brain, they're not normal, they're not natural, but I make them happen. And at times in my life, I was called over-organized. Interesting. So how I come at it, let's go down a base. not the tool and the text, but more where am I doing stuff. When I'm on the move right now, to be perfectly frank, my mobile, I've been doing my best to reduce the apps on my phone to what needs to be on my phone, and then what really where everything happens is at my workstation. My workstation is either at my desk or it's on my laptop. So it's either two screen or it's one screen. And I do different types of work depending on what that might be. And for me, for anyone looking to understand the multi-screen, I've got one in front of me, which is my main, and then I've got a total reference, which if I don't need it, it's off. It's not something that I don't need, and I don't want 16 different screens around me, no matter what a Vision Pro might do for me in the future. It has to be simple. It has to be organized. It helps with my flow of doing things. Does that help set a base?
Yeah. I love that you zoomed out to like who you are and like the things that you do as like centering like who you are before we talk about like things that you do, right? You're somebody that loves to get outside and is a drone photography nerd and, someone who practices yoga. And you also describe yourself as, someone who lives with ADHD and autism, right? And that's even like one of the reasons why you built Cleft the way you built it with Jonny and Justin as the OGs here, right? Like thinking about note-taking and idea capture from a neurodivergent kind of first sort of way. So when you say that, what do you mean when you say, we want to build it so that everybody can just kind of roll up or roll out or roll in or fly in or however it is they come? What do you mean when you say those things? What does it mean to build a knowledge capture tool that is built for neurodivergence first?
Yeah, so something that's bias and force is something that it's not full of all the different things you can do. You can capture your thoughts in a really simple way. And that means for this, it's going to be fast. So for my brain, it moves really, really quickly. And it might be gone before I've picked up my sticky note or my marker here to actually write stuff down, which I still have. I still have all the normal stuff that people do. I still have a notebook where I use notes and take notes when I'm meeting someone in real life. Go figure. For what we were looking to do was a digital field book of sorts, I suppose. That's my vernacular around this, which... Sorry, it won't be so loud.
Johnny's laughing because I'm showing him the field notes that I'm writing little bits and pieces as he's listening, so that I can say things back to him later. So sorry for the audio listeners. I've got your Chicago-made field note classic here in my hands.
Yeah, so look, it's about doing one thing really well. In the same way, when I'm going through my setups and that kind of thing, most of the things I do have one way of doing it. It's like an atomic note, like they're there for one thing. I treat scripts the same. I treat whatever the case may be. You've got to just treat it as one thing. And if you have to update that, fine. That's it. So with bringing back the Cleft, it does one thing really well. Helps you capture and get it out to the place it needs to be. That's what it is for me.
Awesome. Well, I know as someone who is not identified as a neurodivergent person, I express gratitude for any software that is built with accessibility first, because there are days when my brain doesn't work normally, right? Maybe I am neurodivergent, but I've never explored that. But my brain works well when using Cleft. I capture my ideas. I get them out and share them where they belong in those ways. Okay, so you mentioned that you over-engineer your life. You have been described as over-organized. What's coming up for you when you say those things? You mentioned routines. You mentioned like maybe even some people looking at the way you live as wrong for some reason. It's maybe let's skip the judgment and lean into the curiosity of what you mean when you say over-engineer and over-organized.
To call myself that, I can also be the most under-organized person in the world as well. This is not a...
Yep.
So I in my personal life, I'm a person who has calendar invites out for people for personal events. Why? Because that's to make sure it actually happens. If it ain't in my calendar, it's not in my purview. I have things like object permanence is definitely not the right technical term, but out of sight and out of mind can happen to people as well as different bits and pieces. So I have to put in reminders and things for myself to go, hey, make sure to remind someone that you're alive to a certain point. And that might sound really bleak, but it's no, that's just... I am very lucky that I can go 5 years not seeing someone in real life and pick up right where we left off. But the learning for me in my later life with my different learnings was not everyone's built that way. So again, part of that and part of the humbling experience of all these things is just everyone has their own way of doing things. And for me, it was getting a guide later in life. Not that there is a guide, no one has that, but to make things a little easier. So for me, doing particular things, like I have a Stream Deck set up that has particular functions that I will say, right, do this, do that, like create a note or bring up my screens to do a certain way, because that just means I can flip into that mode an awful lot faster and not dilly-dally.
Okay, so Jonny, you're not allowed to just skim across the surface of that here. Okay, we are nerding out together about like how we manage our brains right here on Speakeasy. So you've got to go deep. You mentioned something super cool called a Stream Deck. Okay, wait a second. What is that? First of all, and second, like how have you engineered things for you? Like obviously Stream Deck is one thing, but like how do you manage your brain to be able to do the things that you want to be able to do as a 21st century worker?
Starting with the basics of treating myself like a human as opposed to a worker, I suppose is the way I look at it. I like to live my life before 12 o'clock in the day Irish, which also suits well working with my teammates on the other side of the ocean. So it means that I get to have a pretty full day before I even kickstart into things. That might be going out and doing whatever it might be. I'm not going to go and run through my morning routine here right now, but the point is then treating my different workstations and planning that out and saying, right, am I hybrid? Am I moving around? Am I somewhere else for that? Is it work that I like to do in different places? Because no one likes doing inboxes on their own. It's nice to be out for a cup of coffee doing different bits and pieces. So simple things like that, right down to zone in level. Here in my apartment, what I do is I have a sit-stand desk. I've mapped out the different rooms so that it's very much, I maintain a work-life balance. I can shut the door even if something's in the same room. So some of that might be sit-stand desks and things like that, which I do have. But a lot of that comes down to, and flip this into my own particular quirks, I need to flip that up every few months. I need to, even if it's just something small, I need to make sure that it's still fitting in the right way. So yeah, it just means that honestly, it comes down to basics. Plan things out and make sure it fits to the routine that you planned out. And for me, I've mapped that out in writing, so it's a little easier to do maybe.
Plan things out, write it down. Yeah, I mean, these are that doesn't sound like over-engineering to me. That doesn't sound like over-organized. That just sounds like smart things to do.
What I just did there is I also went off on a tangent. To make it really specific, back in a previous life, when I was a nightclub promoter, one of my first businesses, which turned into social media, I had 30,000 people in my phone book. I had countless people reaching out to me. I had thousands of people going through my doors a week, and I only learned about 10 years later that I actually have face blindness. So it's a lot more difficult for me to recognize someone and know who they are, and it's not being rude going, hey, I've met you 5 times, but I don't have a connection point, so therefore my brain hasn't done that yet. So for me, I used to over-engineer by, if I had a guest list, I'd probably do what some people would call back then a Facebook. That's in The Devil Wears Prada, that book they do where they're showing who's who. I used to do that for everything in certain ways. It wouldn't always be that detailed and printed up, but I would have had to do that. And I didn't realize why I was doing that until, well after that life.
Well, shout out to you making it work and centering your humanness and how your brain works and just getting the job done, right? Because you needed to be able to know who those people were. And so you had to over-engineer, like how to recall those those faces and those names and be able to work with them. Okay, you were mentioning writing it down and having a diary, having a place to put things. Okay, so we've captured our thought. Where, give us the current version of like how you send things out to be able to be recalled by you later. Like you're doing this, idea capture. Tell us about the system that you're using to be able to recall those things.
So I go right into the basics. I've got a folder structure, which I follow. I've got an inbox, which that's the one part I'm still tweaking about how stuff goes in there. But to bring through it step by step, right now on my Stream Deck, I applied 2 different methodologies. GTD, so getting things done. That's just how I manage the stuff I want to make sure operationally in my own life and work, I get stuff done. And then I have vaults or Zettelkessens, little nooks and crannies that I like to store things away. And I'm a big believer in, not that I always keep this in my Cleft book, but where what I will always do is I'll just delete things as I go. So I go through a very simple capture process, which for me right now is a button on my Stream Deck, which I press. It sets up certain windows. It actually captures from Cleft. Then I have an inbox where I bring things into my Obsidian, and then I bring it out to the right different places from where it needs to go. It's really simple, totally manageable. I'm someone who uses Apple reminders for the things that I want to have as just those daily do this and do that. And I just try and keep it as simple as humanly possible.
Okay, so you said two jargon words that I want to make sure that we blow out and express what that means to Jonny, because I'm confident that over the course of Speakeasy's conversation, GTD is going to be spoken of at least more than once. So I want to invite you, Jonny, to tell us, what does GTD, what does getting things done mean to you? David Allen, not yet a guest on the schedule. We would love to have you. Come on down. And, other GTD people, we are definitely interested in talking to you. So if you're listening to this, Tyler at cleftnotes.com, come on into my inbox. But what do you mean when you say GTD, Jonny?
It's not the jargon, so apologies. That's not my meaning. Where I'm coming from,
No,
I'm
not. I'm saying jargon because I just want to get your version out into the.
Oh, I mean, for everyone else listening who doesn't know me well enough to realize I don't really believe in jargon words, even if we have to use them. But for me, GTD is very much, look, I need to get things in, so I want everything in one inbox. Everyone has a downloads folder that they ignore. I have an inbox that collects everything that I have to process, organize, or delete along the way. So I have an inbox, I have a way of processing things, and I have a way of getting those to my different bits and pieces, whatever they might be. It might be a task, it might be delete, it might be, hey, turn that into an atomic note somewhere, whatever. I'm not going to go through my list of things right now. Point is, for me, it's just my way and my system, because that's what it is all about. It's not about tools, as that's the only thing people remembered listening today. For me, some of these tools I will update and change over time, but for me, the system will stay the same. And even that's always something I'm working on. Okay.
Well, thank you for blowing that out there for us and making it clear what you mean by GTD. Okay, so now you were saying something about Zettelkasten. Okay, what's Zettelkasten?
Okay, so really high level, and I'm going to get butchered by anyone who's really into it because I try and do the simple ways. Everyone has their own way of doing things, and the same way I treat anyone with a template. It's a recipe. Everyone adds their own salt. So in terms of, for me, that means I'm trying to create some atomic notes, something that means something to me in whatever part of my life. And my challenge is always, how do I vault that? What box does that go under? But really simple, it goes from a fleeting thought into something that's permanent. There'll be some reference and literature work in behind that. But the main thing for me is it's also in personal life, I find it very useful for building out my values. So understanding, right, you're going to change over time. Your opinions are going to change over time. So mapping out and tracking that over time, I just find super interesting because, we all change. And if you haven't changed enough in a few years, you haven't really done enough work.
Okay, so I've got to lean in here, right?
Go for it.
I said, tell me about Zettelkasten, right? And then you mentioned atomic notes, and then you talked about your values as a person. Help us to connect those dots, and maybe bring us along that journey together of how a note-taking system becomes a way to express who you are.
So, yeah, first off, Zettelkasten, it's a system. It's a nice way of collecting things that are fleeting and turning them into permanent thoughts. When it comes to me and why I apply and even look at all these different systems and why I'm doing that, I'll tell you a wee quick story that I used to be the photo guy when I was back in high school, college, all that kind of thing. And part of that, well, for me, is actually, it's part of how I collect memories. For me, it's a much better way of going back and remember that, because I will literally forget something happened. Not out of badness, it's just the way my memory works. So in terms of notes, for me, it's a great way of mapping out who I am, who I would like to be, like we all do when we sit down and do our lovely cup of tea and sit down with a scented candle, notes and journaling. But for me, it's a great way of mapping out my connections and different things and just working on things. So that's why I would even bother doing a note-taking system. You've got to ask, why are you doing this at the end of the day? And for me, it's just, look, part of it's mapping who I am, part of it's mapping where I'd like to be. Really, really simple. That can mean work, that can mean personal, but I don't like to delineate. There's only one Jonny.
Well, I resonate with that idea of living life as an integrated person. living life as someone who is reflective and who thinks about who they want to be, right, and expressing that. And I guess maybe the thing that I'm picking up there when you say you're building memories, right, and like that's even just how your brain works. Can you tell us more about what you mean when you're saying that you're building memory?
Yes, I'm helping fill the gaps. My brain will still have a memory, but it needs certain triggers or joggers. So it means even when how I use Cleft, there's lots of different kinds of users, but I like the voice. I really like the voice there. I'm not always going to listen to it, but I like the opportunity to go back in time and to feel that context, whether, when I was taking that note, when I was coming out of a meeting, or when I was coming out of meeting someone in real life saying, oh, I really must catch up with that person. For me, it physically helps me go back into that place. And that's really just something for me as a personal user. But the other element of is the creating memories part. And even, I suppose, how I got a bit deeper. I've always taken notes. I've journaled since I was a kid. But when I got really into the systems, it was probably along the time where I learned more about the ADHD and the autism and things. Not at the same time, unfortunately. And had I had this lovely system years ago, I might have caught one of the first ones, because I'm one of the unlucky few who got diagnosed with ADHD before it was actually officially in adults. So it was one of those, I suppose, from an integrated person point of view, being told a huge part about yourself and then saying, yeah, it's probably not real. That whatever marks that might leave in time. I suppose for me, it's just like many people who are neurodivergent, you go through what a lot of people go through in their teens, which is you get to figure yourself out in a way that's you as opposed to what you were supposed to, or what everyone else told you to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess maybe that's the thing that I want us to kind of invite you to conclude here is when you think about giving some advice or some suggestions to others that are on this same journey as you of trying to figure out how to get things done or how to turn fleeting thoughts into memories, right? And becoming a better human, right? What are the things that you would suggest and give ideas to people that are thinking about this journey themselves of becoming a better person by making use of the computer as a teammate or just writing things down on a piece of paper or a field note, right? What are the things that you might say to some folk as they're trying to figure this out for themselves?
First off, I promise we'll do a screen share session in the future to show some of the stuff that I've been talking about today. But I suppose in terms of actually what they can do, look, it's the same as we treat, as Justin's always getting us to do, is ship it. In the same way in life, just do it. Nike got it right back in the day, and there's a reason for that. It's something that people will write about all day, and actually that's the biggest thing for anyone who's talking about note-taking and listening and all this kind of stuff. Don't just live in a notebook. I'm talking about capturing memories because I've created them. Go out and create them is basic, and part of why, I suppose, we created Cleft was for those AFK moments where you don't want to have to sit down and take a notebook to capture that. In the same way, a photo is amazing, but sometimes that's just not enough. So that's what I say. Just go ahead and do it. Capture it and make sure you actually cherish it. That's what a lot of note-taking might be to people. I know for me it is. Other than that, I would definitely say download Cleft and give that a go, because for me, look, as a founder, I'm just excited to share this journey with other people. I'm the lucky one who's got to get face to face with hundreds of our users since April, which is insane. Because we're only in August right now. This shouldn't have happened for a few months in terms of numbers. And the stories I'm hearing, we'll come back on and talk about it again another time, or we'll make sure they come on and talk about it. Because it's just been amazing and it's been humbling. And I would say, please get on board with that. And for me as a personal user, honestly, I'm just so lucky that the other part of Jonny made this along with an amazing team to go, look, here's something that's made your life physically and all the different angles better. And I did not expect that, so I'm pleasantly surprised, to be perfectly frank. So join me on that journey.
I cannot think of a better invitation than to head on over to cleftnotes.com and join us on this journey. We would love to help you become a better worker, better person, all of the ways that we want to live integrated lives that are serving ourselves and others better. Thanks for that reminder, Jonny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tyler. Amazing day.
The The Speak Easy podcast is brought to you by Cleft, the easiest way to collect your thoughts. With our cross-platform applications, you can simply capture your ideas wherever you are and paste them where they belong later. Check us out at cleftnotes.com. That's CLEFTNOTES.com. Thanks for listening as we think aloud together.